The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Sunday, September 22nd, and I'm back trying to get a show done from beginning to end without the internet going berserk on me and dropping me and driving me crazy. I apologize for yesterday. It was crazy. It was ridiculous. I was not happy. I do have all your super chats, so do not worry. We will get to all of them. It's just see, Applejack just did his third super chat on the live stream. Thank you, Applejack. Really appreciate that. Alex, thank you. Durowski, thank you. Really appreciate you guys' support. It's tough. I went to the reception at the hotel and complained, and I said, they noticed that the internet kept dropping. Doesn't usually happen. And today they said, internet seems stable. So here we are. We will see if the gods of the internet, at least at this hotel, actually support that. Today, I went down south in Israel to Sderot. Sderot is the largest town in what's called in the vicinity of Gaza. So one wrong turn and I would have been right in Gaza. Lots of military blockades, that couldn't have happened. But it was a little eerie, I have to admit, to be in a town where Hamas and the Palestinians, the Gazans, were in during October 7th, where they committed some of their murders. With people, some of which, there was a bunch of young people there who lived through September 7th. At Sderot, there was a conference, the Freedom Conference. It's held annually every year in Israel. I've attended a number of them, spoken at a number of them. Over the many years, it is a conference of what you'd call classical liberals in Israel. Quite a few objectivists, but also a variety of different conservatives, small L libertarians, maybe even some big L libertarians, I'm not sure. Certainly small L libertarians, religious, secular, but generally people who believe in separation of church and state, economic freedom, and a strong Israeli military, again, with some disagreements and some variations. I recorded 3 podcasts there with 3 different podcast hosts, which was a lot of fun. We got to talk about a lot of different things. One of the podcasts, kind of funnily enough, the whole thing was just about Michael Milken. It's an Israeli podcaster who does economic and financial history, and he likes to talk about economic and financial history. And he had heard me talk about Milken on this podcast on a number of occasions and said, "Hey, I'm doing a whole show on Milken. I'd love to talk to you and then get some quotes from you and then use those in the podcast." So we did an hour interview on Milken, which was a lot of fun. I got to remember a lot of stuff that I guess I've forgotten about Milken, about finance, about these kind of issues, and that was good. And then I did another hour of objectivism and the war and economic freedom and individual rights and the difference between objectivism and libertarianism, and covered a lot of things. And the third podcast also covered a lot of things. And then I gave a talk on war and morality. And the talk is in Hebrew, so many of you will unfortunately never see it. But I thought it was good. I thought the talk was good, and I found it interesting that the audience was, from my first sentence, the audience was silent, attentive, focused, engaged. It was really good. It was fun, I think, to do, even though the topic is so horrific. I got some good questions in the Q&A, just a short Q&A, just a couple of questions, but it was good. It needed, everything I said needed to be said. I talked about, what a self-interested, egoistic execution of a war looks like versus kind of the altruism that dominates unfortunately, that dominates warfare, including this war. I talked about victory, what victory would look like, and what is necessary for victory. And I did get asked about the hostages, which is a little heart-wrenching, because I know that there were people in the audience who maybe have relatives as hostages, certainly who know people who are hostages. These are people who live in the area where the hostages were taken. And I had to say, look, you cannot run a war worrying about hostages. You just can't. You have to win the war, and that needs to be the number one central focus. If you can rescue some of the hostages, you rescue them, but otherwise, you cannot keep negotiating with the enemy. And I said, you don't negotiate with terrorists. Should have never been negotiations. There shouldn't be negotiations. And with terrorists, you have to crush them. You have to defeat them. If you can militarily free as many hostages as you can, you should. But you cannot negotiate. Negotiations only makes things worse. Negotiations only sacrifices the future to the present. And ultimately, that sacrifices your existence. Anyway, that was my day. I think I was speaking for 4 or 5 hours straight, and my throat is feeling it a little bit. So hopefully we'll get through to this show smoothly. But I'm definitely, my throat is definitely itchy. Hopefully it's just me talking a lot, not me getting a cold or getting sick or anything like that. All right. Yesterday we talked about the beepers and we talked about the other communication devices blowing up, and we kind of covered that. But what I didn't get to is discussing Israel's assassination of the Hezbollah, really the number one senior military official within Hezbollah, the number two within Hezbollah. Since they assassinated the previous number two, what was it, a month ago, this guy had risen to number two. He was number three, he became number two. And they managed to assassinate him. His name was Ibrahim Akil. Ibrahim Akil is the second, the guy they assassinated a month ago, who was the number two, was the other one. These two have been wanted by the United States for decades now. The United States had a bounty on Akil of $7 million. The other guy, it was $5 million. This guy's even higher up in terms of the U.S. Both accused of planning and participating in the bombing of the U.S. Embassy in Beirut, and of course the U.S. barracks in Beirut, where 241 U.S. Marines were killed. They were also involved extensively during the 1980s in taking U.S. and German hostages in Lebanon, U.S. and German hostages, and of taking hostage the CIA chief from the embassy in Beirut, torturing him and executing him, and then dumping his body. These nice guys have both now been killed by Israel. I don't know, curiously enough, shockingly enough, surprisingly enough, I guess, I didn't hear anything from Biden, from Kamala Harris, from National Security Advisor Jack Sullivan, thanking the Israelis for finally getting these monsters. I also would note, and I think it's important for all of us to remember, that now, the bombing in Beirut were in 1983. What is it, 40 years, 41 years have passed? It doesn't seem like the United States has troubled itself too much with retribution against people who killed hundreds of Americans. I find this just shocking and horrific and horrendous. A betrayal of those brave soldiers who enlisted in the American military thinking their government would protect them, and at the very least would respond to them being attacked so as to protect future Marines. But nothing. No thanks to the Israelis, but also for 40 years, no real attempt to get these guys. The United States could have gotten them. I have no doubt. Everybody knew where they were. So Israel yesterday bombed a high-rise, well, not very high, but a multi-storied, An apartment building with multiple stories in Beirut. It turned out that Ibrahim Akil, the Hezbollah's operations chief, was meeting with a dozen or more, actually more than a dozen, top commanders in Hezbollah's elite Radwan force. This is a force that has been planning an October 7th-like attack on Israel in the north. They might have actually been meeting to talk about doing exactly that in the north. They have the numbers. They could swarm the border in the north, take over a number of settlements. Ultimately, one of the goals of Hezbollah is to conquer the Galilee, to conquer northern Israel. Anyway, he was meeting with these I guess this was a secret meeting. This was the entire top staff of the Radwan force. Ibrahim Akil had been the head of the Radwan, and he was promoted to operations chief because the previous operations chief was assassinated by Israel. And he was meeting with all his top commanders. Israel knew of the meeting, knew the location. The meeting was in, supposedly, not in a lower floor in the building, but underneath the building, in a basement underneath the building. Israel managed to destroy that basement, destroy the building, and kill everybody inside. They killed Ibrahim Akil, but they also managed to kill the entire leadership, the entire top leadership of Hezbollah's most elite fighting force, the Radwan force. Another, dramatic and massive blow to Hezbollah itself. This is, of course, following everything that happened with the, beepers and the other means of communication. Israel is basically dramatically, not a little bit, but dramatically weakened the leadership of Hezbollah, their ability to control, their ability to plan, their ability to be strategic, and their ability, ultimately, in terms of command and control, to launch attacks on Israel. Again, a massive intelligence feat of knowing that this meeting was happening, where it was happening, and having the capability of threading that bomb into that building to destroy everybody in that room. So, again, kudos to the Israeli military, kudos to the intelligence, kudos to the Air Force, kudos to the ability to pull this off. And, we can talk about the chain of command within Hezbollah. You've taken out leadership, but you've also taken out probably about 4,000 troops that were injured, some of them very seriously, as a consequence of the beepers. So you've taken out a big chunk of Hezbollah. You've taken out their leadership. You've weakened them dramatically. All right, what do you do? Again, are we freezing? Frozen? I'm back. Hopefully, we'll see. Does it? God. Does it have a strategy? Does it have a strategy to fix it? One possibility about this freezing internet is that I'm causing the freezing internet. I wonder if the hotel has a limit on bandwidth uploads. So I wonder if I cause these hotels' internet to crash because doing the show. I don't know. Maybe it's the Mossad watching me. Maybe it's somebody else. I don't know. זה חזר. Yeah, it's not The problem is not, I see you guys are back. It's not video quality, because the problem is that when it works, it's working fine. When it works, upload and download speeds are really good, and the quality is good. It's just that it suddenly shuts down. It basically goes to zero. So I just don't I don't get what causes it. I didn't do the show until I was sure that the internet seemed stable. So I ran video for a while. This sucks, Andrew Traeger says. Yes, it does. It really does suck. And I don't have, my hotspot doesn't have a good connection here, so it's not like I can switch it onto running it off my phone or something like that. It's just not enough. There's not a good enough cellular connection here to be able to do that. All right, let me just say again, the real question is for Israel now, what now? What is the point of all this? What is the point of diminishing Hezbollah's capabilities? How do you win? You know, the promise of the Israeli government is to return life to normal in the north, to stop Hezbollah's attacks, to be able to return people to their homes and to normal life in the north. Killing off the leadership has not prevented the missile flying. All right, somebody says shut down other applications in Windows. It's not other applications in Windows. If it was other applications in Windows, you know, this is the internet. The internet is just throttling me somehow. And again, before I went live, it was not an issue. There was no issue. Anyway, let's not talk about that. Let's see if we can get some content in, and if not, we'll have to. The chat doesn't matter. It's not the chat is not affecting it because it's not my download. It's my ability to upload. That's what's freezing. So again, let me just you know, maybe if I shut down video, maybe then it would work. Go to just audio. That is, I don't know how to do that exactly on YouTube. So what does Israel do now? I mean, you would think that given the throttling of the leadership, the command, the control, the communications within Hezbollah, Israel would use this opportunity basically to provide a death blow to the organization. And that would mean invading Lebanon, driving Hezbollah at the north of Litani. And I believe ultimately it means going to Beirut. And going to Beirut and destroying this organization once and for all, at least giving it such a defeat that it would take it years or decades to recover. And then retreating, and then letting the Lebanese clean it up. Maybe the Christians, the Jews, and the Sunni Muslims versus the Shiites, which are the Hezbollah, would actually clean up the remnants of. It's bombing the hell out of Hezbollah. It's bombing the hell out of their facilities and, you know, everything that all their military facilities, killing as many of them as possible. But you cannot win by doing so. The only way Israel can win, the only way Israel can achieve actual victory, is to go into Lebanon and dismantle this organization on the ground. For that, you need tanks, you need personnel. The tanks and personnel, as far as I can tell, are on the Lebanese border and ready to go. The decision needs to be made at the highest levels by Netanyahu and by Ministry of Defense and the government that this is what is necessary. Instead, they seem to be playing, again, a more sophisticated, more intense game of tit for tat, full-blown war, as if what's going on right now is not a war. as if there's no war already. There's already a war. So it's as if they want Hezbollah to initiate it and not not do it themselves. Veldin says, I can't see Israel with ground troops and tanks in Lebanon. It's going to happen. One way or the other, it's going to happen. They're not going to have any choice about it because Hezbollah is not going away. They're not stopping. They're not slowing down. It's a question of who has the strategic initiative. Does Israel allow Hezbollah to have that initiative? Do they allow them to initiate the terms, the timing, and the way in which this new war happens? Or does Israel actually initiate, choose the time and the strategy? Now would be the right time, given what's happened last week. And do they actually what's it going to take, I guess is the question I have. Like, if tomorrow Hezbollah launches a barrage of missiles, and like they did today, they launched 150 missiles. Most of them fell on empty ground. One of them hit, I'd say not most of them. Most of them were shot down by the Iron Dome. Some of them fell in kind of empty spaces, and one hit a home just north of Haifa. And this is still not enough to generate a response from the Israeli government. So what's necessary to happen? Is what's going to have to happen, is it going to have to be that a number of Israelis get killed? How many Israelis need to die so that this government realizes that it's in a full-blown war and actually acts as if it's in a full-blown war and actually does what's necessary to protect the citizens of Israel? And it feels like we're going to kill them, they're going to launch missiles, but if one of those missiles hits a home and people die, then we'll invade Lebanon. I mean, that's sick. It's disgusting. And it really is the same strategy that Israel's been engaged in the last 30 years. Like, Hamas will keep attacking Israel, but as long as they're not killing anybody, we keep shooting down the missiles, we're not going to do anything about it. And you build up and you build up and you build up to October 7th. So no confidence, no self-esteem, no backbone, cowardice, which is, I've told you for years now, Netanyahu is a coward, an indecisive coward, That is the best description of Netanyahu. His government won't do anything. Now, everybody says, okay, it's not Netanyahu, it's really the Americans. And there's certainly a basis for that. I mean, what was the Biden administration's response to what has been happening in Lebanon? The beepers and the killing of Akil and the senior Hezbollah leadership. What's been the U.S. response? U.S. National Security Advisor said that he's worried about the risk of escalation between Hezbollah and Israel, that it was now acute. I mean, and I hear this term, escalation. You heard about Israel and Hezbollah. You heard it about Israel and Hamas. You hear it about Ukraine and Russia. I mean, the United States is dominated, this administration is dominated by one emotion, fear. Fear of change. It's not even that escalation would lead to some horrific outcome for the United States. Quite the contrary. It might actually lead to a good outcome for the United States. The destruction of Hezbollah helps the U.S. And if Iran enters, well, there's an excuse to take out their nuclear program, and we all benefit from that. But escalation is like, escalation means World War III. Escalation means we're all going to die. Escalation means nukes. And you hear this constantly. It's so weak. It's so pathetic. It's so cowardly. And it's so lax in long-term strategy. Escalation now will save escalation later. Escalation now, right now, in Lebanon, puts you in a better position to deal with Hezbollah later on. Or to deal with other Islamists later on, because Hezbollah would be destroyed. It's just, all I hear from this administration is, no, don't do that, escalation, don't do that, escalation, don't do that. I mean, what's necessary right now in the Middle East is massive escalation. What the Middle East needs right now is a war. What Israel needs, what the United States needs, is to destroy their enemy. And you need a war to do that. I don't know, somebody, I think, is hopeful that maybe Nasrallah will surrender, give up, change his aims and goals, and escalation won't be necessary. But that's fantasy. Complete and utter fantasy. Let me read you something. This is what was I looking at? Right. Let me wait on reading this 1 second. What end all was. All right, let me read you this. This is what Nasrallah said a few years ago. A few years ago, Nasrallah said, this is a quote from one of his speeches. Lebanon was a Christian country, but we took it, and now it's ours. After we kill all the Jews, in Palestine, we will just have begun. We won't stop until every country on earth is ruled by the law of Allah and the people of Islam, like our Prophet promised. I know, most people don't take the Islamists seriously. Most people don't think that they are serious about their threats for world domination, their intention for world domination, and taking over the world. But the reality is they are serious. They really believe in this. Right? This is what they really want. And we have an opportunity. The West has an opportunity. Israel has an opportunity to actually destroy their capabilities to do so. Now is the time. And yet, they're refusing to do it. They're refusing to do it. And says that doesn't sound like just a land grievance. It's not. It's not. Never has been a land grievance. Hezbollah has nothing to do with Israeli land. They're a militant Islamist group, Shiite Muslims. They're not Palestinians. They live in Lebanon. They're funded by Iran. They have no land grievance with regard to Israel. So, no, this is just the state of things. So, the West is weak. The West has no self-esteem, no moral backbone, no confidence in what they believe or what they think or what they think is good. They are, they are weak and indecisive and refuse to take the action necessary to defend themselves. And the consequences, and this is the sense in which Israel is at the forefront of this whole battle, issue, conflict. Israel's fighting the war that the entire West is engaged in. And Israel is at the front lines. This is the war of the West, which Israel is, again, at the front lines of. And the West seems to be withdrawing their support from Israel. Escalation is what they are attacked of, what they are afraid of. All right, let's see. So I don't know what's going to happen in the next few days. It's hard to tell. It doesn't seem like Hezbollah wants escalation. They don't want a war with Israel. They don't want to give Israel an excuse to come into Lebanon. They also have diminished capabilities. They have diminished capacities. So they will continue to launch rockets into Israel, but they've been doing that for 11 months. They might expand, as they did today, into areas that they haven't bombed before. Like in this case, they bombed the areas just north of Israel, the industrial areas just north of Israel, supposedly trying to attack a military base in that area, which is not completely unthinkable. So it's quite possible that that was their intention. Not very good aim. They were also trying to, they claim, trying to attack a particular facility of, what do you call it, a tech company that provides military tech to the Israeli army. So those were supposedly the targets. They might expand the target list, but they're not going to launch kind of a massive attack on Israeli population centers because they don't want to give Israel an excuse to go in. But how long can Israel just tolerate even this low level of attacks? And if not now, when? I mean, there's never been a better time. There's never been a better opportunity for Israel to actually go into Lebanon and engage with Hezbollah than they have right now. Never. Because of the fact that Israel has weakened them so over the last few days. So we're going to have to see. The pressure on the Israeli government is mounting. If you watch Israeli television, what you hear over and over and over again are these